Ladies and gentlemen, the communists and the trade unions are throwing their toys out the cot because the ANC don't want to play with them anymore. So, this must all be the evil fault of, capitalists and whiteys. But before we get on to the main news story, if I can yet again remind you, please subscribe to the channel if you can. And if you'd really like to support the work I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. So let's get on to it. So what's actually going on? Well, the first is the Sunday World issued a news article in which it claimed that the MK Party and the South African Communist Party were basically plotting an alliance. So the reason for the alliance was supposedly because all the parties are grateful with Cyril Ramaphosa because, he formed this GNU. And one of the things that we're going to see quite a bit as we progress the stories is that what we typically tend to find is that a lot of these alliance partners appear to be very upset because they're not the main players in the alliance anymore. So according to this news story, the SACP was aligning itself with the MK party because they felt that the ANC was betraying the Wakas and they wanted a socialist rule in the country. The ANC wasn't pushing it forward under Cyril Ramaphosa's GNU. They were working with the DA. They were all evil because, whiteys, apartheid, and the usual story. And a key component in all of this is that they were asking for the ANC for a reconfigured alliance, which is something they started under the last administration. And now their role in this reconfigured alliance was basically non-existent because the ANC needs to work with the other GNU parties, and their voice, where they actually got votes, actually matter more than the SACP, who didn't. So they were going to go to someone else who would potentially give them a voice and a platform, and that was the MK party, supposedly, allegedly, because you see the party then came out no more than a couple of days later saying that they have not actually had this engagement with the MK party and they would not be leaving the ANC, but they did say that they would be open to considering discussions with anybody who was, prepared to push forward the revolution, the usual communist stuff. What then became even more interesting is that the SACP issued this discussion document. And in this discussion document, they actually concede that their influence inside the ANC has actually diminished. And the rationale for their diminishing influence of the ANC is because no one knows who they are. No one really voted for them. And you see, this is a key point because no one votes for the SACP. We say this time and time and time again, but the SACP isn't a party on its own. It's actually garnering support of its policies from the public through the ballot box. It's a party that effectively leeches on the ANC and attempts to push forward its objectives through no democratic will. So why is all of this important? Well, because according to them, they want to join with Kasatu and essentially leech even further off the ANC, but demanding that the ANC give them a voice and some recognition so that they can, push things forward. But that's not generally how it works. You see that the way that they should get their things pushed forward is that they go out there and actually get an electoral mandate, which they don't have. Now, you see, if they were as important and as influential as they thought, the ANC wouldn't have lost the elections with 40% of the vote. But they did. And why did that occur? Well, on the whole, it occurred because many of the ANC's policies pushed forward by the brainchild of the SACP led to economic decline, which led to more and more people not having jobs, no electricity, no running water, their cost of living going up, and their general overall day-to-day experience with life being absolutely poor. The net result is that people wanted democratic change so that they, could potentially get somebody who gave more of a damn about the citizenry than their own personal pocket. The reasons for the electoral defeat to the ANC are really not difficult to understand, apart from to those with a communist mindset. Because you see, communists really are the dunces of the group, because according to the SACP, they recognize that there needs to be a battle of ideas between progressive forces and neoliberal white colonizing agendas. But you see, the problem is that the SACP can't have a battle of ideas because nobody voted for them. They're not out there in the public actually trying to get support. Now, according to the parasites, the Communist Party, they say that the idea that there should be this progressive caucus actually is true in their eyes because they say the ANC got 40% of the vote, the MK party got 14.5% of the vote, and the EFF got, a whole 9.5%. And that together, this equals like 64.1% of the electorate. That may be true, What they also tend to forget is that the amount of people that actually voted in the actual election were like a handful of people. There was a really small percentage of the Republic that actually actively voted, and that political parties getting their members actively engaged in order to vote isn't really a voice of the voiceless or the silent majority, as we typically tend to want to call it. Now, with that all being said, what exactly does this all mean? Well, according to the South African Communist Party, they can't pursue the NDR, National Democratic Revolution. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a Soviet-era policy whereby you use the democratic ballot box to bring in communism, usher in the glorious Soviet Revolution, and then ban all opposition. Except they can't really do it because they don't have the voice or the votes. But you see, instead, what they're doing is they're just going to whine at the onset, constantly saying to the ANC, why don't you pay attention to me? So where did we actually see this occur? I actually saw this in the outgoing president of the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union. Now, this long-standing member, which was a, central executive member of COSATU prior to being the president of the police union, well, he says that the alliance at the moment, with the GNU, they just don't consult the trade unions or the alliance partners. They don't give them a voice. They, just get on with work. And as far as he's concerned, working with the DA is just like terrible. Nobody actually within the ANC asked his alliance partners if they wanted that. You see, what they did is they adopted the old North Korean principle that the ANC has been so keen on adopting, democratic centralism, whereby the top executives of the ANC make the decisions and everybody else just has to shrug their shoulders and go with it. Apparently, this was an abuse of that process because the top execs of the ANC said, you're getting a GNU, whether you want one or not, and now it's abuse. Typical communist fashion, right? We're happy with everything until we don't get what we want, and then everybody else is repressing us. Now, this outgoing president of the police union himself says that their actual decision-making and their influence, their relationship with the ANC is deeply diminishing, and yet again calls for a reconfiguration of the alliance so that they can get more influence on the ANC. But you see, this is the problem. These individuals will then go on and on and on about the working class and how, all the labor reforms that they want to see occur so that the labor unions are just really powerful and the employers are properly affected. But they generally tend to forget something. And it's something that the South African Communist Party is guilty of themselves in saying in their own press releases. And that is, they see the way at which we're going to build the economy as having a bigger public wage bill. We have universal basic income grants. We have all these big and wonderful employment programs that the public sector are going to pay for. And they generally tend to forget the fundamental problem with all of this. And that is, who is going to pay for it? The next problem inevitably becomes something that we've all seen with the police unions. Yes, it's true. The police unions have got greater rights of recognition than ever before. Yay! That's fantastic. But crime hasn't gone down as a result, has it? Just because you have labor reforms in a specific given area, just because you have more influence in order to be able to slap the ANC around, even though no one voted for it, doesn't mean that crime improved. Doesn't mean that suddenly we're the safest country in the world. At the end of the day, it's all good and fine for these unions to be lobbying the rights of their members. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But they don't stop there. They all want to impact the socio-economical arguments in the country. They want to argue about the political ideology and the educational ideology of the governing party, even though they have no electoral mandate to do that. And in the process, they collapse the very entities that they're meant to be protecting. You're meant to protect the police officers' labor rights. But in the process, those police officers still need to service the public. And service the public in many instances, they are not. That's why crime is so bad. That's why we have a flourishing private security sector. We see the exact same thing with COSATU. We see the exact same thing with the South African Communist Party. And then all they tend to do is, as everybody's ignoring them, is just, the same old bozos leeching on the ANC time and time again without any electoral support itself. They just threaten the ANC. Yeah, we'll divorce you. Go for it. Divorce them, go out on your own, get your own constituency, fight in the elections, attempt to win the elections, and then you can use your votes and your seats in parliament to push through whatever agenda you want. But the problem is they all know the one fundamental issue. You're going to get no votes. No one's going to vote for these idiots. So instead, All they do is continue to whine. And you know what I must say? I take my hat off to the ANC, because if I had these whiners on my case every single day, I'd go absolutely nuts, and I'd tell them to leave. Hell, I'd burn their own headquarters down if they whined at me half as much as they whined at the ANC. But that's just my view. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.